Hello, this is the next video in my series on looking at units I'm creating for Talavera 208, and this is the first of the Spanish 5th Infantry Division commanded by General Bascour, and this is my first Real Marina battalion. Spanish Marines were in regiments of 2 battalions, so this is the 1st battalion. And before I go into looking at some of the colour options I've used on my Spanish Marines, I've just put up a few of the books that I'm using to support what I'm doing in terms of planning my forthcoming Talavera afternoon attack. So some of the key books I have been quoting and referencing are from left to right. We've got Wellington's first Portuguese campaign, and that's the Talavera guidebook by Richard Partridge and Mike Oliver. It's quite an old publication now, but there's some really good reference information in there about the campaign and helping to break the battle down into segments, which I've used as a background to breaking Talavera up into my scenarios. So that's something I'd really recommend if you're interested in this battle. Obviously there's the Osprey title. Osprey campaigns are always a good base reference for looking at a campaign overall, and the information is pretty good, so I'd recommend that one. And then I guess really the bedrock of my Talavera scenarios and the research that I've done on it, and it's a book I've referenced again and again, is Andrew W. Field's Talavera, Wellington's First Victory in Spain. Really good read, great book breaking down the battle into that sort of forensic study that I've referenced again on the blog. I can only fault it in there's 1 or 2 errors in the orders of battle at the back, but as a way of checking when things happened according to the sources. And there's some really good maps in there breaking down the attacks and showing where individual units were, together with first-hand accounts from people who were actually in the battle. So again, that's a book I'd really recommend looking at if you're interested in working on Talavera as a game. So back to the toys. So I thought I'd just go through some of the colours that I've used with my Marines. And just let that focus there. So the blues, because the as I mentioned in the post, the Spanish Marines differed from Spanish line infantry basically that their coats were blue instead of white. So you can use a standard Spanish infantry figure for these chaps. So I'm always wary, having seen my first efforts of these, you're going to get all fingers and thumbs. It's trying to make sure that these don't get blurred, so as I bring it in close into the camera. So there you can see the blues that I'm using there. So I like to use, for my sort of standard blue, if you like, dark Prussian blue as a base, Vallejo, and then Prussian blue as a first highlight, and then I tend to add in a little bit of buff just to bring that up to show the faded blue that would occur under the harsher Spanish conditions. They're bright light. So yeah, those are my blues. Then for the reds, I tend to very often use a base such as black red to give that shadow. So that's what you're seeing coming through in on those plumes, where you're getting all the little creases in amongst the feathers of the plume. Middle coat will tend to be Vallejo flat red. It's good solid base red. And then in this case I've just brought it up a bit with scarlet, and that's the scarlet I would use for, say, British officers' jackets, and it's a great little highlight for a good full-blooded red scarlet. And then the other thing to mention is that the Spanish were very fond of their browns. Brown material was very common out in Spain, and indeed the Allied forces and the French forces wore brown Spanish cloth. It's also the material that's carried very often with the rolled cloak that you can see on this chap here over his shoulder. again brown Spanish material, and it can also come in quite handy for doing skin backpacks, as you see here on the select the French model. So these are animal fur backpacks. So I've used, for my bases on these browns, burnt umber is a really good solid dark base, highlighting that with flat earth so you can see that the colour jump. And then this might look scary, and this is the thing with using these sort of like triads of colours. Light brown, you can see that is very, very light. Watered down, it really just highlights the browns beautifully. But when you first put it on, it can be quite scary. So if you look at the thigh on that Spanish Marine at the back, you can see it really brings out the detail, and likewise on the backpacks you can really start to highlight the texture of the packs with that light brown. So when it goes on initially, you look at it and you think, wow, that's going to be a bit shocking, but as I say, getting used to using triads is getting used to being brave with the colours to help bring up the detail, especially with an 18mm because they're a much smaller figure. And I made reference to it in the blog post, but I'll just reiterate the help that Tony gave me with my flags for MS Foy, blog MS Foy. So this is my Spanish Coronella for the Marines. You can see the anchor insignias in the corner, and for my my red tassels, if you like, the ribbons at the top of the colour, I've used my trusty wine bottle foil, very, very thin strips cut and then twisted around the top there, held in place with super glue, and then you can colour that appropriately. But the beauty of it is it gets a shape and it holds its shape, and it looks just great as far as I think for these ribbons. So that's what I've used on there. I think that's about it really. So as you can see there, my officers in their Spanish naval uniforms, using the gold technique that I used with my British generals and marshals that I took from Rafa's painting guide to bring up the gold work on these officers. So there we are, that's the first Rail Marina. That's the first of 7 battalions of Basque Corps Division. So the end is in sight in terms of the painting, and really looking forward to just getting out there and playing. So ticking them off and moving towards June when we're going to get the first game going. So there we are. I hope you find that useful if you're planning to paint some Spanish Marines. And thank you, until the next one. Bye now.